collectively is best qualified to do the job and make a hire, and it kind of gets out of the old, the political appointment kind of thing. It's, it's still a political appointment, but there's a process by which, it's fair, right? It's open, anyone can apply and present their case that they're the one for the job.
Any other further discussion? If not,
I'm not completely opposed to it, but I would like some time to read what you have drafted. Honestly, I didn't see the email. I must have missed it. So I'm not ready to vote on it tonight, but I would like time to review what you have presented in this draft.
That's fine with me. I emailed to all of us, but sometimes we miss them. But I'm fine. We do it whenever.
okay.
So what would the right thing to do be? Defer to the next table to the next meeting, or just?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know if you're going to. Looks like you have the consensus that you want to post the job. You could post the job at least to get this to the applicants. If you wanted to, and then wait. I mean, even if you post the job, it doesn't mean you have to hire somebody, right? Because you might not like any of the applicants. You might decide.
I say as a council, we should actually discuss it first and how to move forward with it. If we're gonna post it, if we're gonna adopt this draft mission statement on job duties, I don't wanna put the cart before the horse, so.
Well, that was the whole point. I put it down so we could start the discussion. And that's why I sent this out days ago, so we can maybe at least make a decision. Do we wanna post and advertise? Then we can work on, if you don't like this and you want to change it, or do you want to just keep going, forever? So are you saying you're undecided as to the process? I know you haven't read this yet, so I get that.
I'm undecided as to the process, and I would really like to dig into that. I like to look at the charter, not that I don't believe what you put on this draft. And I also like to look at that resolution that we passed as a council unanimously over a year ago, and see if there's anything in there that we can pull from that would benefit us going forward.
It's fine. I put my research forward and I sit back.
So would you prefer to table this to the next meeting?
Sure, if we have at least
2 weeks.
Sure, I'll send it in again to the to be put on the docket for the next meeting. I'll resend. Or just table it, okay. So we can just table this as it is.
Thank you, Councilman. Next item, please.
Next item.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I would move to table, and in that motion suggest anyone wants to, if you want to do your own thing, that's fine. If you like some of this and you want to send me suggestions, I'll redo it. However, but I'll move to table.
I would just make one suggestion, if that's the case, that we have it set by the next meeting. So the next meeting, if there's any editing that needs to be done, let's do it in between tomorrow and the next meeting. So by the next meeting, we pretty much have a clear cut the direction we're gonna go in.
Well, we have to be very careful of that, because the meeting as a council behind the scenes going through, to do that, you're editing a document that you're all kind of agreeing through emails what the document should look like. So I would suggest that you put in your comments by a certain date, and then we can distribute them to the rest of the council. But I don't want the council back and forth through emails. I like this job description, I don't like this. That would be a violation of the open meeting law. So sorry about that. So I think if you set a date that everyone get their comments into maybe to Bob, and
Sure.
Sergeant at Arms.
A week from now, right? Is that enough time?
I'm good. Yeah, I mean, I read over it already.
Okay. All right, and then that gives us enough time to post it and bring it back to the next
Yeah.
meeting.
Okay.
And so that motion to table it until the next meeting,
Yes.
which is, the date of that is what? 2 December, 3 December? 7th, the date which we're living in.
December.
Okay. Wow. Then I will second that motion.
Okay. So we have a motion. That motion was seconded. And Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call on the motion?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
Next item is school zone camera clarification by Council Vice President Rhode, and it's Council Vice President Rodrick, it's discussion only.
Yes, I believe Police Chief Francis Coney is here, and I basically wanted to answer a couple of quick questions that I think I and some of us have received. It's just kind of a overview, Chief. For instance, locations, we're only talking school zones, the times. Question came up about why are there different speed limits, and I've checked on a lot of this, but I thought if it came from you, it would be clearer. So that's all it is, basically.
By the way, Chief, this is your first time up here as the chief,
First time.
right? Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Fun, isn't it?
I hope not to disappoint. All in school zones per Rhode Island general law. We have one on Forbes Street, Riverside Middle School. That's a 20-mile-per-hour school zone. We have one at St. Mary's Bayview. That's a 25-mile-an-hour school zone. The reason for the difference is on the state road and some locations on Pawtucket Ave, it's a regular speed limit of 30, and sometimes it's 35. We attempted to have it all the same through the State Traffic Commission, but that, as of right now, that hasn't changed. So we also have one at Ken Heights. That is a 20-mile-an-hour school zone. The high school, East Providence High School, that's a 30-mile-an-hour school zone. I'm sorry, 25-mile-an-hour school zone. And then St. Margaret's is a 20-mile-an-hour school zone. They're all, by state law, they can be on from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. We run ours 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. The thought process there is most school activities at all the schools are done by that time. We wanted to keep it consistent so people weren't confused. Is it 3 here, 5 here, 4 there, 4 o'clock across the board? We're currently in a 30 school day warning period, which began on November 3rd. That will bring us to January 3rd, when you take into account school break. January 3rd is the targeted time for actual violations to go out.
So the basic question of why are there different speed limits, and these are not speed traps. This is the state speed limit. They were there before cameras.
Correct.
For instance, at Bayview, it might be, is it 35,
35.
and at Ken Heights, it's 25. It was
Correct.
always that way.
Yeah.
That's the state speed limit set by the Traffic Commission.
Ken Heights is 30, and the
Yep.
school speed is 20.
Yep.
So that's just the state's,
So it just
set speed
follows
limits.
that.
Correct.
That was it basically for me. I don't know if anyone else want to add, but it's just an update. And
Mhm.
so after the holidays, people can expect the real thing,
January 3rd.
January 3rd, yeah.
Mhm.
There is a humongous difference on Pawtucket Avenue in front of Kent Heights. Kent Heights, St. Martha's Church. I mean, I know people in general aren't crazy about the Big Brother aspect cameras, but I mean, I've lived there for 16 years now, right off Pawtucket Avenue, right there. Both my kids went to Kent Heights. I don't know how many cars I've seen flying through school zones, going through, traffic. The red light in front of St. Martha's, nobody pays the least bit of attention to that thing. So seeing people slow down and pay attention, that's a step in the right direction as far as I'm concerned.
That's the goal here. Compliance, change behavior, get people to slow down.
One anecdote to go along with that, Councilman, is I drive by there hundreds of times in a week. Just with the warning period, it's working.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, I feel like I'm in is it the Twilight Zone? Everybody's going slow, and they're all looking, around and looking at each other and looking up and looking at cameras, and you see drivers looking at each other. It's working.
We want everybody to know exactly where they are. I'm meeting with company representatives tomorrow to explore other ways to get the word out to people that these are the speed zones. We want it to be very, very, very well known. There's no secrets here. Everything is out there, and we're going to see what we can do to be even more transparent about it.
Chief, who's sending the warnings out?
So the company sends potential violations to us. Right now, our traffic unit reviews each to make sure there's no issues. Once they approve them, they send it back to the company, and the company actually does the mailing.
So what's the turnaround time, would you say?
Well, right now, I don't have a great answer for that because being the first couple weeks, there's an absolute onslaught of these warnings, and we're doing our best. I'm talking thousands
Oh,
of
sure,
warnings.
sure.
We're doing our best to keep up. It's not abnormal, though. In discussion with the company, any rollout, they see this right here. You know, initially, until word really gets out, there's an onslaught of warnings. From what they've seen in the past, they hope that by the third month of actual violations, you see the steady number you're going to get month to month. So you have an idea of what, you know, the real workload's going to be after month 3 of the violations.
So we're talking about March.
Marches, yes. Yep.
And that process would still be the same as the warning violations? When
Yes.
the violations are issued,
No,
still go through that same process?
no one receives a warning or a violation without a police officer first reviewing it, making sure everything is appropriate, there's no mistakes, and sending it back to the company with our approval.
And then where are the violators sending, that violation back to the company, or is it coming to city?
Everything goes through municipal court. It's the same, if they want a hearing, they still afforded the right to have a hearing. If they want to simply pay the violation, that goes through the company.
It goes through the company?
Yes.
All right. But then the funds come back to the city?
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we started getting phone calls, because my office does municipal court. The November 3rd violations, people received them in the mail this past weekend. So we're getting phone calls on Monday.
Right.
So they have about 2 weeks, it seems like right now, because we got.
Yeah, there's literally
There was a lot.
thousands in
There
the
was
queue
thousands
right
of them.
now for us to send out.
What is the violation monetary amount?
$50.
First offense?
It's a
and then-
it's a non-moving violation.
Okay.
It's always $50. It doesn't go towards anyone's, driving record or their insurance. Yeah.
Chief, last question, excuse me, because I know this will come up tomorrow now. Are we putting officers under any undue stress, taking them away from other tasks? I'm sure it's taking them away a bit, but is this a hardship?
Right now, we're trying to get to the point where we know what it's going to be long-term. We don't know what it's going to be long-term. Right now, yeah, it's a lot. It's thousands of warnings. What we have in our favor is we're going to get a break. We're going to have school break. We're going to have probably 10 days, 14 days of no more warnings. We'll be able to catch up. Our hope is to explore other ways to let people know they're going through a speed zone, so it's even more obvious than it is now, so that number doesn't spike again. Currently, we have 4 members of our traffic unit issuing the warnings. If that needs to be tweaked, changed in the future, I've already, met with, folks in my command staff, the traffic unit, the union representatives, and we'll constantly evaluate, the needs, and we'll adjust as we need to.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Okay.
Can I just highlight something the chief said, right?
Please.
So, we're seeing a slowdown. None of this is secret. If this isn't the most talked about issue of the last several months, I don't know what is.
Mhm.
These things are fairly visible. They look like something out of the Terminator, and there's signs everywhere, and you've still got thousands of warnings.
Correct.
Which gives you just a basic idea of how bad it was before any of that went in place.
Mhm. And I might add, when you drive through one of these, a 20-mile-an-hour speed zone, you're not getting a ticket for going 21, 22,
Right.
23. There is a buffer zone built in there so that if someone just isn't paying attention or, you're not getting a ticket for doing a few miles an hour over the speed limit. All those signs are mandated by state law, the size of them, the colors of them. There has to be 4 in each direction, 3 white, 1 lime green. So it's all, according to Rhode Island general law.
Chief, what is the distance from the first sign to the actual camera itself where it can pick you up the speeding?
The first warning sign to the camera. Hang on one second. I believe it's 400 feet, but let me just double check here.
So we're telegraphing.
At least, I'm sorry, 100 feet prior to
Oh,
entering an automated school zone area. Yeah.
You know,
And-
oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and again, general legislation law is 7 to 6, 7 AM to 6 PM. We're doing it 7 to 4 PM. It's Monday through Friday. It's not on weekends. It's not during school vacation. It's not during the summertime. If school's not in session, the cameras are off at that point in time.
That's correct.
So just make it clear to everybody that it's only during school time.
The other interesting thing is, you know, my son and I took a big road trip this summer and spent a lot of time driving around DC and New York City, and the cameras are everywhere in DC and New York, especially Manhattan and the Bronx. Your Waze and Google, they know where every single one of them is, and they tell you speed camera approaching in 50 feet, right? So those things will eventually learn where these things are too and be communicating that to drivers.
It's well advertised in Pawtucket on Waze. I use
Yep.
Waze also. In Pawtucket, it's, advertised on Waze.
And once you get hit with it one time, you know better enough the second time.
Would you divulge how many warnings you've received, Chief? You don't have to answer that.
I
Just kidding.
as of yet, I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard, hey, look, so, I'd like to keep it that way. Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you, Chief.
Okay.
That'll be it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we may proceed on. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearings. We have an ordinance for first and final passage. This is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 19 of the revised ordinance of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled zoning. The summary is the proposed amendment will allow for digital menu boards to be allowed to use when associated with a permitted drive-through operation, such as a fast food or bank drive-through facility. The digital menu board must comply with all of the other sign requirements, such as zoning district, surface area, height, and setbacks.
And who is this, who's sponsoring this ordinance? Which one is this?
Yes, this is you. I forgot to put that on there.
This is what I need.
The sign, yeah.
I'm
that
sorry.
one.
So I would just like to speak on this. I think this is good. It was something that I know we've had other restaurants who have had issues with their digital signs. It
Oh,
has
okay,
been
yes.
helpful, and they need it to attract, and to help their business. So I see this as a positive for our businesses, and I think there are some other areas that we could probably.
So I know that you've been working on other, this was a really simple thing to
Right.
deal, because this comes up before the zoning board, but I know you want to look at other digital sign and relaxing those requirements in different zones too.
Right.
And I know the zoning board and the planning department are working on a more comprehensive,
Sure.
but this was an easy
This
kind of
is- yeah,
fix.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
we got a lot of
Yeah.
these,
Right.
Like-
Just like an elephant, you got to take it one bite at a
like
time.
Dunkin' Donuts, like obviously these,
Right.
this would apply to that and stuff.
Well, this also applies to St. Margaret's Church. I recently put one up as well. So this has been something that's long in the making, actually.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah, yeah. Goes back a few
the
years.
city, yeah. So I'm free, if anybody has any questions. I apologize, kind of, as far as the council is concerned at this point in time. I'll open up to the council first, and it is a public hearing, as the city solicitor said. But any questions at this point in time from the council? Concerns? Issues? Okay, yeah. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. Again, I'll announce it one other time. Please, sir. If you could just state your name and address for the record.
Louis Gerardis, I'm a former resident of East Providence.
Okay.
In Boulder. Just want to go back to the previous issue with the chief here regarding speed limits, just for a second.
Okay, sure.
I had a very expensive vehicle towed, maybe worth about $45,000 today, and I never got a record of receipt from the city of East Providence, law department, nor the police department that it was confiscated and seized under whatever authority they had.
Chief still here? Maybe someone could take your name. Maybe Mr. Gonzalez could take your name and number, and he can look into it further for you, sir. Okay, again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. If not, public hearing is now closed.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by the councilwoman. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
We have a second by Councilman Rodrick. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Thank you. Next ordinance, please.
Next is ordinances for second passage. The first one is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 18 of the revised ordinance of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This is a summary, would be that the stop sign at Arnold Street at Sprague Avenue, and the sponsor would be Councilman Morato.
Are you open it to public comment, correct?
Yes.
If there's no public comment, I move to approve as read into record by Deputy Clerk.
So before we go for a vote, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach podium. Otherwise, public hearing is now closed. Councilman?
Second the motion.
Oh, okay, we have a motion. We have a second. No. Roll call. Vote,
Councilman
please.
Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next ordinance, please.
The next ordinance is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 11 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Personnel. The summary is to amend Section 11-4 to allow the Personnel Director to certify employment and promotional lists not acted upon by the Personnel Hearing Board within 14 days of their submission. The sponsor is Councilman Cahoon.
I think Deputy Clerk did a good job of summarizing what that ordinance is, and we spent a lot of time discussing it at the last meeting. So I guess opening it up to public hearing is the best thing to do.
So again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. Otherwise, public hearing is now closed at the pleasure of the council for discussion.
Mr. President, I move to approve.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor by the councilman for approval. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Present. Second.
Okay, we have a second. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Nay.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Nay.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next ordinance, please.
The next ordinance is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 11 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Personnel. The summary is to amend Section 11-26, 11-28, 11-30, and 11-31 related to the Personnel Hearing Board appointments, terms, and membership to confirm with the city charter and other miscellaneous amendments. The sponsor is Councilman Cahoon.
Same story. Ordinance is identical as proposed at the last meeting. This is the one that has the several ordinances, the several sections on one page. We got public hearing, so.
Okay. Yes, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. I'll mention it one more time. This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. If not, public hearing is now closed at this time. At the pleasure of the council.
Mr. President, move to approve.
We have a motion on the floor for approval. Would anyone like to second that motion?
Second.
We have a second on that motion. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Nay.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Nay.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next ordinance, please.
Next ordinance is an ordinance and amendment of Chapter 11 of the revised ordinances of the City of East Providence, Rhode Island, 1998, as amended, entitled Personnel. The summary is to amend Section 11-46 related to add additional grounds for discipline under the city code and modifies the number of votes necessary to discipline any council-appointed officer or employee. The sponsor is Councilman Cahoon.
I'll describe again.
This is a public hearing. Again, anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this ordinance, please approach the podium. If not, public hearing is now closed. At the pleasure of the council.
President, discussed a lot in last meeting. I would move approval.
Second.
Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on this, please?
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Nay.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilman Souza.
Nay.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next item, please.
The next item is public hearing. It's improvements to Kent Heights Park and Providence Avenue Park. The summary is comments and suggestions on possible improvements to encourage the use of the parks for persons of all ages and would assist the city's efforts in securing the necessary funds from the state and other funding agencies.
Mr. Fazioli, you have a presentation for us this evening?
No,
Or just come up and speak on behalf?
Yeah, just the cover memo describes,
Sure.
summarizes the grant process and the particulars on the two projects that the city would like to apply for grants for. The first one is a new splash pad at Providence Avenue Park to replicate the success at the Central Ave and Pierce Field ones. We found those to be very popular. The second one is for a grant for proposed improvements to Kent Heights Field. This project was originally identified in the capital budget for fiscal 2022, where there was money set aside to make some improvements. When this grant opportunity came about, middle of September, we felt since we had the money in the budget, we could use that as a match to enhance the work at Kent Heights Field, to include a broader scope of things, including a futsal court, walking paths, ADA play equipment, and there is some proposals to make field improvements, which I guess is crowning, which will hopefully help with some of the drainage. There might be additional work that will have to be done for that. As part of the grant at Kent Heights is to hire a landscape architect to help us identify ways to maybe improve drainage.
So, Mr. Fazioli, can you just expand upon the drainage, because I didn't quite hear you? I know there was a gentleman, or there is a
Yep.
gentleman here who has some questions and or some concerns about that.
Yeah, no, the field does get very wet. It's just the soil conditions, because it's basically in a gully. A lot of soil, a lot of water just drains there automatically. But there is a proposal in the grant to use the services of a landscape architect to identify ways to manage and make some improvements to the drainage. Whether or not that's covered by the actual physical improvements might not be covered by the grant, but city staff could make some of those changes outside the grant. But I think hiring a landscape architect will certainly give us some options to consider how to handle the drainage in a better manner.
Sir, does that answer your question? Okay, very good. At the pleasure of the council, anyone have any questions?
I just had a question. Mr. Fazioli, would that extra work, that would be additional funds that we'd be seeking, because that wouldn't be within the budget?
Yeah, that depending on what the measures that are recommended by the architect and what staff could, we either come back to the council for additional funding, or that work could be done by city staff as part of their normal park maintenance, in terms of just enhancing drainage, drainage measures in the park, which they do. I remember years ago, the soccer field behind Martin Middle School that would always flood, but they made some adjustments over the years, where they raised it higher to allow for some runoff, so maybe that's something they could do. And that was all done in-house. So.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Now, a couple of things, if I may. That park hasn't been touched in a really long time. The tennis courts and basketball courts in particular are taking a beating. And there are, like Mr. Lewis said, there's a ton of people that use that. You go by there every night, doesn't matter what the weather's like. There's people, walking dogs, out there with their kids, whatever. So I think this is sorely needed, a long time coming. To speak to the process a little bit, Bill, as I understand it, we go through the grant application, DEM approves or denies. Upon approval, there is still a set of steps that needs to take place with the planning board, et cetera, right, to kind of determine what the final plan is going to look like.
Exactly, yeah. What we have in front of you is, like, for the purposes of a grant, a range of estimates that we work with our contractor who does the playground equipment and our city staff that, come up with some numbers that are good enough for a grant. But once the grant is received, depending on the amount, we'll certainly have to come back and fine-tune the budget, get some community input and engagement on the design of the walkways, the playground equipment, things of that nature.
Yeah, so that's an important point, right? Not only will, the planning stuff be a public meeting, but that there is going to be community engagement in helping decide what shape
Exactly.
that park takes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mr. President, I want to add my strong support for this. We're getting to a point now where we are really enhancing our parks and recreation to a point in which they haven't. But that isn't to toss blame. It's through the past few decades, they were just there. And I think in the past couple of years, I don't think I know, because I see it and I walk them. We're doing some good things. We're using some grant funding. We're having other funds that we can use that can't be used to, say, lower the tax rate. You know, people that don't want to see us do this would say, why don't you lower the taxes? Well, some of those monies can't be used for that. Capital expenditures, grants. So let's do it while we can. Kent Field, and I grew up there, and as a kid, and I remember, because it was a playground. However, before 4th Street, that was the city landfill, for those who don't remember. It was way in the back. The ball fields were up towards Clyde Avenue on the street. That's all been redirected. But Kent Field hasn't had a lot of attention, as Councilman Cahoon has stated. It looks nice when you ride by, but it could use what you're proposing and we're proposing now to really make it nice. Same thing with Providence Avenue. You know, it was just kind of there. It was down the road from Crescent Park. Sabin Point got a lot of attention, but Providence Avenue serves a lot of kids, a couple of Little League fields. So these are, as someone said earlier, no-brainers. Why we wouldn't support this would be beyond me. There may be a few years from now when we can't do stuff like this. So it's got my support, obviously. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
I would, to one of the speaker's points earlier, I think moving forward, when we do a lot of these redos of parks and improvements, thinking of all children in the community and making it more inclusive to all the students, to all the kids. I know some of our redos for the elementary school parks, they didn't have necessarily maybe that foresight with each park. I know White Neck did, because they have a majority of disabled children that go there, probably the largest population in the city. And so that park did cost substantial amount of money, that playground, as opposed to the rest of the ones at the other elementary schools, to the point where we couldn't even do it to the extent that we wanted to, because the money just wasn't there. And I know the city did help, along with private investors. So I'm excited that we're taking that into consideration when we're doing these parks and getting, because I'm assuming there's more grant money with using that specific mission in that, making those parks over. So I'm really excited about that for the future of our youth in the city. So I thank you for your hard work in your department. And I look forward to the inclusiveness also in the community. So we have a lot of committees and nonprofits throughout the city that are really gung-ho and interested in doing this. And I think the more people we get involved, the more resources, the better and more successful this whole project will be throughout the city. So thank you for that, Mr. Fazioli.
One thing about our parks, we utilize it here in the city of East Providence to its fullest. If you take a look at Agawam Park, for an example, I'm coming home last night around 8:30 in the evening, perhaps even later. There's softball games going on at Agawam. Go by the basketball courts. Still, here we are in November, still playing basketball weekends and weekdays as well. One of the things I've always said about East Providence parks, if you can go around the state, and I go around the state a lot because I play basketball indoors and outdoors, primarily in the summertime outdoors, and in the wintertime outdoors, you see how much our parks are utilized. I mean, literally, and no matter where you go, they're fully utilized. So this investment will go a long way, as they do with all the other parks as well.
Yeah, so again, part of the DM requirement for the grant applications, we have to document there was a public hearing held,
Right.
and with the input from the council and any resident. We did advertise this as a public hearing, so the grant application is not due till December 17th, so we do have opportunities to fine tune this, but the amounts, I think, will probably stay the same, but there's individual components that we could certainly modify based on any feedback or input we get.
And again, this is a public hearing, so anyone wishing to speak, for those primarily who did not have the opportunity early on to speak, please approach the podium. Ma'am? Can you just state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Bethany LaCane, and I live at 557 Bullocks Point Avenue. That is directly across from the old Oldham School. I have 7 grandchildren who live in town, and I'm really excited about the possibility of revamping the Providence Avenue playground. My husband takes a walk every day with a bag of trash and cleans up all the trash in the area, and in the afternoons he takes a basketball and goes over to the basketball courts almost every day. So I think the splash pad would be a really nice addition to this playground, not only for the children and the young families in town, but also the senior citizens who like to play basketball. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
We
You
do
don't
your
look like a woman, you don't look like a grandmother of 7 grandchildren, by the way.
Thank you.
And please pass our thank you on to your husband for doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And he picks up the trash even when the trash barrels disappear. So, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Again, this is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please approach the podium. If not, public hearing is now closed.
May I
And
piggyback on one more thing? Councilwoman Souza was talking about it, and specifically the White Neck playground. Most of the school playgrounds that were done largely through, fundraising efforts, right? The PTAs were really involved, and they were able to be done at a, I wouldn't say reasonable or nominal cost, but a much lower cost than what the White Neck playground entailed, because of, all of the ADA stuff that had to be put into the playground, all of the equipment. And I know you were over there, we were digging concrete out of the ground when that was going on.
Yeah.
And the school department actually kicked in a substantial amount of money to augment what had been raised at White Neck, because they just were not gonna get to the finish line.
No.
So what I really like to see in this particular grant is a plan for, and I think it's about 20% of the overall funding that would be involved with developing ADA accessible equipment for kids to use, because that's so expensive, and it's gonna be very difficult to get that equipment by way of your traditional fundraising stuff. Not to say that that's not important or appreciated, it certainly is, but that's something we're gonna have to put a turbo boost on in order to help people out who are doing the right thing by the city. The other thing that I really like about this, other than the fact that it's very close to my backyard, and it hasn't been touched in so long, is that it is very much a central location in the city. I mean, the water tower is right there, right? And being able to reach it fairly quickly from, either Rumford or Riverside, or for the folks that live in the Kent Heights area, which is a lot of people, I think it's a smart location in terms of parking. If you have, ADA accessible vans that are pulling up, there's a lot of parking space there that may or may not be in other areas. So it's a good location. It's a good choice for this grant, and gives us a chance to see how it works. And if it works well, maybe there's an opportunity to rinse, wash, and repeat.
thank you, Council. Thank you, Mr. Fazioli. And we may proceed on to the next item.
Do we have any appetite for moving up those 2 items, the resolution votes for both Kent Park and,
I don't have an issue with that. The pleasure of the council. No.
I'm good with moving up, so we can,
So
Make a motion
if people are
to
waiting
move.
for that, then let's move 'em
resolution
right up.
C1 and 2 up for a vote.
that takes us to where, page 9,
I'm sorry, that would be C2 and 3, right, Council?
C2 and
Oh,
3.
so, correct.
Okay, so C2 for folks following along is the resolution authorizing the submission of the grant application for the Kent Height Recreational Facility. C3 is the submission of the grant application for the splash pad at Providence Avenue Park. With that said, I'd like to move to approve the resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management Recreation Development Grant Program for improvements to the Kent Height Recreational Facility.
Second.
Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon?
Aye.
Councilman Morato?
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you. Next resolution, Councilman?
The next resolution is, Councilman Robertson, you sponsor that, would you like to?
Sure. And I would move that C2, the resolution authorizing the submission,
Wait,
3, I'm sorry, the resolution authorizing the submission of a grant application to the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, Recreation, Development Grant Program for a splash pad at Providence Avenue Park. It's a motion.
Second.
Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir.
Oh.
Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, we are on to no, new business.
New business.
So new business, we have mayor communications. The first is appointment requiring council confirmation. This is to appoint Craig A. Mcmanus to the Economic Development Commission. He's appointment / seat 3. His term will be from previous May 20th, 2019 through May 19th of 2024.
So the councilman, this is a vote here. And I noticed the councilman stepped out for a bit. You may proceed, though.
So you guys have his bio and his background. This is to fill a vacated seat. Mr. McManus is a vice president of underwriting at Embrace Home Loans. Got a business administration degree from Community College, Rhode Island, and followed up with a business management degree from Rhode Island College.
Mr. President, I'm looking at his bio. I did look at it earlier, and we received it, our packet. I also, I think in a visitation of the high school, I don't know him, but I was introduced to him. He was there looking over at the high school, and very impressive financial background, and I would think would be a very positive addition for us.
So before we proceed with a vote, we'll wait for the councilman to return, unless you all want to vote on it right at this point in time. Do we need the councilman here? No answer, we'll wait for him to come in. Okay.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I move to approve
Yeah, I would
the
second.
appointment.
Okay. Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote on that?
Councilman Cahoon, not present. Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. You can ask the councilman when he returns. Next item, please.
The next
Announcement.
item under announcements would be the memorial tree lighting and holiday celebration on November 27th, 2021 from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. with a rain date of November 28th. The event will include a visit from Santa, dance performances by the local Rockette dancers, and singing by professional carolers, dozens of craft vendors, food vendors, raffles, barn fire, and more.
Would you care to elaborate, or that pretty much paints the picture?
She
Okay.
summed it up perfectly.
All
Can I
right,
just
very
have a
good.
question? Where's the bonfire being held?
I don't have that announcement, that information, this announcement, but I can find it out for you.
Okay, I just wonder if it's in the middle
And
of the
hopefully it's
parking lot.
B-O-N, not as it says here, B-A-R-N. It might be some neighbor's barn. So might want to change the spelling.
Just wonder if it's gonna be in
Yeah.
the middle of the street or in the parking lot. Because I know we're closing off the streets for the event, so
Yeah.
I'm just
Okay.
interested in that. And did we pull a permit for the fire department?
I'm sure it's been pulled.
I'm sure it has.
Next announcement.
The next announcement would be the EP Veterans Memorial Expressway 60th Anniversary Rededication held on Saturday, November 6th, 2021. A total of 50 memorial bridges and exits are rededicated. We'd like to thank Susan, Katie, and Nancy Moore for the dedication on this project and event. We have entered into record in East Providence Military Honor Roll prepared by Miss Katie.
I'd just like to add, she did a fabulous job with that. It was a long time in planning, and I don't know if anybody had the pleasure of attending the event, but it was well attended, and she did an excellent job with it. I applaud Mrs. Katie for her efforts in the rededication and her commitment towards our veterans.
I don't know how she gets all the names for her honor roll, but I mean, I went through it. I couldn't find anyone that she missed in that packet. She's got literally everybody.
Yeah,
in there.
she's very impressive when it comes to her knowledge of veterans in East Providence and their commitment to us.
So, Councilman, as you stepped out, there was on the new business mayor communications appointment for Craig Mcmanus. We wrote it. It was unanimous, at least amongst the four of us. No issues. No issues. For the record, if we could just have Councilman Cahoon's in an affirmative. Okay? Mr.
Next item is the request of the administration before the council for council action, Executive Order 2021-016, the extension of the municipal emergency.
The administration has decided to withdraw this extension of municipal emergency while we review it a little more extensively. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Can I comment while it's on the docket? Because I did some research, my yellow pad today, so I don't want it to be done for naught. I just caution us that these are facts that are coming out, and I mean, I was prepared to end the mask wearing and the emergencies, but I'm a little up in the air now because, and I'll jot down, I'll read a couple of things that I read in depth today and yesterday. According to all health agencies, Rhode Island Health, CDC, others, this Delta virus surge has hit New England hard, and half of all states in the country are seeing rising COVID rates. Rhode Island Department of Health has said the level is very high. New infections are on the rise. There have been 16 COVID deaths in the last 4 days in Rhode Island. Hospitals are getting crowded again with staff shortages. That doesn't help the issue. Rhode Island has the third fastest increase in COVID infections in the United States. Transmission rate has doubled, the fastest increase in hospitalization of all states. There are some other numbers, 963 new cases. 2 Rhode Island large high schools have this week now gone to full virtual at-home learning, Pilgrim, Burrillville, total distance learning, something we do not want to go back to in East Providence. Our kids want to come to school, our parents want them in school, and our teachers no longer want to teach looking at a laptop. The trends are not good heading into the holidays. One of the reasons Rhode Island is at a high risk is because of the waning immunities. People always thought with immunities, you're all set, but it seems like after 6 months of immunity, that kind of wanes. And we're getting there. The vaccine rate is good, not good enough. And I like to listen to the experts, and my only analogy is I call a plumber to my house. I don't lean over her shoulder. I had a woman plumber once come to the house. I don't lean over her or his shoulder and say, you need to solder that elbow this way or do it that way. Plumber plumbs, the electrician does the electrical work. The medical people give us advice. So I'll wait to see what administration comes back with, but I certainly have some concerns, and I don't want to see us slip back. This is not a political statement. It's not my statement. This is a statement from a lot of people that do this for a living. And statistics and science don't lie.
And if I may, Mr. President,
Please.
I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Roberts says. What I asked, I'm sorry, your name again? Nick. Please, good Lord. Sorry, Nick. So what I asked Nick to put up there, and this is a site that I've been paying attention to really since things broke bad. So my master's degree is in bioinformatics. What that is basically writing code to analyze DNA and protein strings. Don't ask how I got into that field or why I'm not in it now. It didn't turn into what I thought it was going to be. But what it has given me is an appreciation for data and sort of ways to think about data that I don't think that everybody necessarily does. What you're seeing here is really a profile of the daily new infection rate in Rhode Island since the start of the pandemic. And you see back here, I think we'll all remember like the early days back in April of 2020 where we spiked. We put in a whole bunch of measures. The summer came, things kind of relaxed. We got around to the fall again, and it spiked. And it spiked higher than it had been before. And this profile is actually pretty consistent across the states. Most states have a very similar kind of profile. Small spike, bigger spike, and then if they're really not paying attention, a next really big spike, which happened in a couple of places like Texas and Florida. And what we saw here is we saw the things start to trend down again through the summer. No surprise, people are outside, they're not gathered inside. We're starting to get back into the period where people are inside, kids are back in school, and we're seeing this thing trend up again. So again, it's not politics. Virus does not care about politics. It's going to infect as many people as it possibly can, and a lot of those people it's going to kill, unfortunately. So we need to not lose sight of this fact, right? This is what it did before, literally 1 year ago, right? I think we're going to be looking at this with a significant spike here in the next month or so, because that's just what viruses do. And to Councilman Roderick's point, that's what everybody who studies this stuff for a living is saying is going to happen. So let's just be cautious. Let's think about this, and let's put the right measures in place.
Any other further discussion?
Thank you.
That being said, next item, please. Thank you, sir.
Next item are reports of other city officials. Report of the city solicitor, the Claims Committee report.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and members of the council. As you know, City Council met in executive session as a Claims Committee prior to the meeting at 6:30. The following action was taken on the following claims. Claims of Richard and Linda Pina in the amount of $2,450 was denied. The claim of Jose Pinero in the amount of $100 was approved. Sewer charge abatements. Sewer charge abatement for Mr. Jason Pasqualaca in the amount of $474.38 was approved. Claim of Joseph Furtado in the amount of $680.70 was approved. And a claim, a sewer charge abatement of Our Lady of Laredo Church in the amount of $939.64 was approved. That concludes the claims. The second thing that I have on a report, I believe I sent this to the council when we got it. You may recall back in the early summer, Keep Carmet Green filed a open meetings complaint against the city council as relates to its actions at the May 18th, 2020 meeting. At that time, the allegation was that our agenda item, which was discussing whether or not there had been a substantial change in circumstances, was sufficient enough and broad enough, as stated on the agenda, to include a discussion related to not only the substantial change in circumstances from the first application to the second application, whether or not the discussion that delved into whether or not they should be into the what's the commission? So the Waterfront Commission. I'm sorry, the Waterfront Commission should have been discussed as it was discussed at that meeting. The Attorney General, I'm pleased to say, found that there was no violation of the city. I do want to read from a portion of the decision that was rendered by the Attorney General. Basically, it says, additionally, unlike terse agenda items that we have found to violate the Open Meetings Act in the past, such as old business or new business, the agenda item here described what would happen, discussion and vote, cited to the relevant city ordinance, specifically identified the property and the owner of that property in question, the subject of their petition, a zoning change, and the issue that needed to be determined with regard to a potential substantial change in circumstances. I only point that out because I know I get some pushback from the council when you guys put stuff on the agenda, for your communications, and I sometimes push back it's not specific enough. And the standard is if you got to be specific enough that a person in the general public would understand what's going on. So the more specific information that we can give to the public, the better off we are. And so that's how we've kind of avoided these complaints, and so that's why we're going to continue on that line. So when I do push back, when you submit something to the council for your council communications, and I say, well, that's not specific enough, I just recognize I'm trying to do the best to protect the interests of the city and to make sure that the public has a good idea of what's going to be discussed at the council meeting, as is required under the Open Meetings Law. So thank you.
Just one quick observation. This is, if I'm not mistaken, the meeting, the 18th of May, when I afforded the opportunity for a KMG administrator to come up and speak about affordable housing, if I'm not mistaken, and the complaint was filed against me.
It was Affordable Housing and the Waterfront Commission.
And the Waterfront Commission. So, I mean, and my observation is essentially that, had this decision been reversed and found guilty, this would have been splattered all over social media. Tell you that right now. This decision came out a month ago. Okay, and we haven't heard or seen or talked about this at all. So it's funny how when we're found in the wrongdoing, it's splattered all over social media and there's a big discussion about it and ha ha hoo, but yet when the roles are reversed, no one has a comment to say about it. And I just wanted to bring that up real quickly because that was involving me and me affording someone the opportunity to come up and speak about affordable housing, a KMG administrator, and others that talk about affordable housing. So thank you.
That concludes my report.
Okay, next item, please.
Next item, back to resolutions. It's a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract between the City of East Providence and New England Foundation and Stabilization Company for the Carousel Stabilization Project. The sponsor is Council Vice President Rodrick.
Mr. President, there's been a lot of discussion about the work that needs to be done for the carousel. I think, there's nothing that I want to repeat. It's something the entire city, probably the region, is looking forward to. This needs to be done, and this is $83,575 that will go a long way for stabilization. Did we say this is public hearing?
No, it's
Just a resolution, okay, so I didn't know if anyone else wanted to speak on it. I'm not gonna say any more about it. We've had slideshows, PowerPoints. I think all of us have been there to inspect it. I know I have. I've talked in depth with people that are there. We gotta fix the carousel. So I'll make a motion and it can be discussion on the motion, I guess, but.
Could I ask
Sure.
a couple questions? I know Tracy's here. Tracy, would you mind coming up? There's softballs, don't worry. So a couple of things, and I'm just asking for your sense, how you feel about this. Reading through both the RFP that went out and then the contract that we're being asked to approve tonight. I note that we had a schedule in there that had us awarding the contract by September and the work getting done by November. Obviously, the work is not going to get done by November because we're just talking about awarding it today. Oh, started in November.
It is, at least from my understanding, a 4-month project for the simple fact of you're pouring one concrete pier at a time. It has to cure. Once it's cured, they can move on. So the project from start to finish should take about 4 months. I'm very nervous because it is November.
Right. So we'll have to deal with winter conditions and all of that stuff, right? But there's a reasonable outside chance that that carousel's up and running come spring, yes?
I am hoping and planning for a June reopening. It is going to really depend on Mother Nature.
All right. Do you have any concerns about, I know this is a one bid situation. We got one bid come in, and I understand this is very specialized work. You've been closer to it than just about anybody. Are you at all concerned with the fact that we got one bid and only one bid?
Disappointed? Yes, because I was hoping. I had personally reached out to other companies in the New England area, not because I have concerns with the bidder, but it's always good to have more hands in there. So I was a little disappointed that the other companies that had showed an interest didn't come forward. However, after speaking to them, it is so specialized, and there are concerns that they didn't think they could meet our timeline. And they said it's always best if you have a company that's familiar with the engineer that you have. These other companies are out of state. They would have to hire another engineer in state to back up their work. So there were a lot of moving pieces which kept them from bidding. As far as the company that did bid, they're local. They have a great understanding of the project. They know what the carousel means to the community. and they have been very open to speak with our carousel specialist who's based in Ohio. So I do feel really good about it. The current bid that we've asked, the $83,000, is only certain components. There is a chance we've put in for an alternate in case some of the depth has to change. We wanted to know what those dollars would be in advance. But right now we're going with the basic, what we think it's going to cost, knowing that there may be some changes later.
But you feel we've got a contractor that can do, and you would say local, they're in East Providence, right?
Correct.
But you feel we've got somebody that can do the job, and we're not just grabbing at this one offeror because we've got to get the money on contract and we've got to get this done, right?
No, I feel really good about the company that's doing it. They're also closely connected with the engineer who's been on the project from day one, who has met in person with our carousel specialist, and he has agreed to oversee the project just to keep it flowing and everybody is on the same page. And with them being so local, you know what you're getting and your timeline is a little better.
So
And also, do you see this as a necessary step? Let's say we did not vote to do this tonight. What happens next?
We do not open.
We don't open,
No,
definitely.
there is,
And it sits in disrepair longer.
correct, until you decided to move forward. The state is actually what has the carousel closed. They will not authorize any reopening until the first phase of the stabilization project is complete. So without this next step, we would not reopen.
What is the issue with the concrete? Because they should be able to pour the concrete this time of the year.
You have to do one at a time, and the building's not heated. So they're telling me it will depend on winter. If we get a quick, very cold freeze, we may have to think about holding off on pouring concrete until the spring, because they'll be pouring into the sand. I'm not a concrete person. They just wanted to let me know some of the concrete pouring will be subject to weather. There are things you can do. I was told they can do warmers.
Yeah, exactly.
So to help speed it along, and those will be things that we'll discuss when the process comes. But the timeline with it being 4 months is because you're only pouring one at a time.
But it shouldn't be an issue with pouring concrete this time of the year because you can pour concrete this time of the year.
Fingers crossed.
Okay.
So if this is approved tonight, what happens? Do you contact them tomorrow and say, at least start the planning and?
I believe the procedure will be purchasing will send the contract out to the contractor. As soon as it leaves and goes to them, I'll be on the phone or in their lobby, hoping that they sign it and get it back for the mayor to sign. Once we have everyone's signatures, we'll schedule to get it started.
Okay. Any other
If
further
there are
questions?
no other questions, I would make a motion that we approve the resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract between the city, East Providence, and New England Foundation and Stabilization Company for the Carousel Stabilization project. There are 4 paragraphs. Does the council want me to read them all, or is that sufficient?
No, thanks. Nope. We got a second on your motion, Councilman.
Thank you.
Deputy Clerk, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye. Next
Thank you.
item,
Tracy.
please.
Thank you very
Adjournment.
much.
Stick with it, Tracy.
Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to adjourn.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Councilman Cahoon.
Aye.
Councilman Morato.
Aye.
Council Vice President Rodrick.
Aye.
Councilwoman Souza.
Aye.
Council President Brito.
Aye, thank you.